So here's what we got. I'm going to click on the plus sign. We're going to go custom size graphic, popular, square, and next. Now I'm recording this and recording the audio. So here we go. We're going to click the text and add your text. Now I'm going to walk through this, not quickly, but I'm going to instruct it because I'm recording the video. Over here, I'm going to take the letter of my first name. Try it again. The letter of my first name, which is J. Now, once I drop that in there, I'm going to resize that. Now, watch how I do this. These are the resizers, the little circles. Okay, so let's say I wanted some type of an elegant logo. Before I do anything with the J, I'm going to come over here and you can make changes. Now, here's the cool thing. Let's say I want it to be the Crawford green. So this right here, it says custom. That's called a hex color or a hex code. So Crawford's hex code, to get that green that you see in the walls of Crawford, it's 00B050. That is the Crawford green. If you wanted to go in here and you're a UK fan, you could type in University of Kentucky hex code or the colors. See, the hex code is 00330. What I did is I copied it, hit Control C, and then I went into the hex code here, and then I paste it, and that's UK blue. All right? So let's say I want a UK blue because I'm a UK fan. Now, again, we're not trying to take away from it. I'm going to make it larger. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a shortcut, Control D, to duplicate that J, because now I want to make that J an M for my last name. Okay, well, I duplicated it, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure it was the same font. If you want to come over here and change the font, you can change the font. There's a bunch of them. Okay, there's not really a bad logo. It's just what you want it to be. But you come over here where it says Playfair, you click on that, and you can, so if I want to change it to that, I can change it. Let's say you make a mistake, you hit Control Z to undo. So we've done 3 shortcuts, okay, or 2. Control D to duplicate, Control C to copy, all right? And then we talked about what a hex code is. Now, what I want to do is I want the J and the M to attach. See how that works? Now, I can also tell that that's not quite attached, so I'm going to drop that down and make it a little bit larger. And if you notice, when I moved it, you see that dotted line right there? That's allowing me to see where the M is centered. So the cool, like if I want it in the very center of the page, you see how I've got the dotted lines right there? That allows me to know that that M is centered in the page, but in this case, I don't want it centered just yet. Okay, what I want to do, I'm going to hit the arrows and just nudge the M. I'm just going to so easily nudge the M to where I can get them to intertwine. Okay, so we'll see, but it's still not intertwined, and the reason I'm showing you that is, you see that right there? I don't like that. That's not intertwined. Okay, so I've got to work on that a little bit, or I got to figure out how to change that. Now, we can do that with an iPad, but right now we're going to use Adobe. Okay. Good. Good. Got it. Okay. Now, so the next thing, what I want to do now that I've got it is I'm going to start adding other letters. Okay. So let's do this. Let's say I'm going to just do it like that, and I'm going to offset the M. Okay. One other shortcut, you hit Control A, and that selects all. And by doing that, it has everything on the canvas. And this little top icon right here, it's called group. So let's say if I wanted to group it, the reason I would group it is so I could resize the whole thing. After you have it set, then or you can move it around and make sure it's in the center. Now it's in the center of the canvas. Now, the next part, okay, I'm going to go back and ungroup it. I'm going to duplicate the M again. And the reason I duplicate the M is because I want to spell my last name inside of the M. But obviously blue and blue will not contrast correctly or well, so I'm going to make that a C with white. And then from there, I'm going to spell my name. So if you just hit the arrows, it nudges it, like it just kind of slightly pushes it. But if you hit the shift key and arrow, you see how fast it goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of eyeball it. And I'm going to put the C and make sure it's centered. And then I'm going to go with my duplication tool, Control D, and I'm going to duplicate it. And the reason I want to do that is because that makes it white. And all I have to do is go in here and change the letter. Okay. I might have to move it back over, but yet it's still white. Now that's a lowercase c, and in my name, I have an uppercase G. So there's certain things within your name that are already branded, okay, from generations to generations, because Mcguire is an Irish name. I'm fifth generation, County Meath, Southern Ireland. I know that for a fact. So I'm going to put the G as an uppercase G, and then I put 2 lines underneath it. That tells people that that's an Irish name. If it's just 1 line under the G, it would be Scottish. I'm sure there's probably Scottish in my heritage as well. So in that case, I'm going to edge that down, and I'm going to spell the rest of my name. And I'm going to drop it inside. Okay. So select it, nudge it. Are you playing a game? If you're playing a game, you need to stop. Okay. Control D to duplicate. All right, see how I've got it? Control D to duplicate. Center it where we want it. And what I like about doing the duplication tool is it enables me to keep the same font. It also enables me to keep the same color scheme, so I don't have to go back in and change it to white again. Now, I'm having a problem with this I, so what I'm going to probably have to do, now that I see this, is I'm going to have to make every one of those letters uppercase, because that I is just not going to look good to me. So I'm going to have to go back in and change the C to uppercase C. You know, and that's what you do. That's what you do with graphic design. You make changes as needed. And if I wanted to really be creative, you know, when I'm working with art and I'm working with design, sometimes I do things. I'm like, you know what? I like where that looks better. And I want it to touch. So now I'm going to have it to touch. Okay. I'm going to make it uppercase because that's just going to make it more uniform. Okay. And symmetrical, which is same on both sides. I'm going to make the size a little bit bigger. And also, if you wanted to, like, so for example, the C is 294 point, look over there, it's 297.4. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to make all of my letters the same size. So you see how the U is 233.7? I'm going to make it the exact same size as the other ones. That way, you know it's going to be perfectly uniform. Okay, because in graphic design, you need it to be that way. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to use the nudge tool. I'm going to kind of, when I say eyeball it, just kind of make sure it's symmetrical. Same on both sides. I'm going to make the R uppercase. Okay, at 297.4, that's already done. I'm going to drop it in there, and you know that really kind of helps the overall unity, the view of it. And then the last but not least, I'm going to put the E. Okay. And then you know, just for the branding purposes, I'm going to do my first name as well. Okay. So let me change that to an E, because every letter looks different in the scheme of things. Okay, now you see that little dotted line? That's going to help you keep things organized. Okay, uh, so now I've got my last name there, and let me zoom it in and let's look at it. See how it is? See what it looks like right there. You got CGURE. You see the spacing. I got the spacing just about right. The E and the R need to be a little bit closer together. And for you all on your Chromebook, you can hit Control Plus and it will zoom your screen in if you want to get a closer shot of it. But in this case, this is a really cool brand technique. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and do the J the same way. Now, if I'm going to keep, remember we talked about the hex code, HEX hex code. Okay. With the hex code, one second, guys. All right, so the next part is I'm going to go back to my design. And if you want to do design assets with your design, I recommend doing this. Before you finish your project, before you're done, and let me let it open. Up here on the top left, it says My Post. You want to, right now, everybody needs to rename your Adobe logo with your last name, your first name, logo, 10/19/21. And on the board, it's listed as such. I just put the name, the label of your class. So here, when we download it, you're going to send it to a shared folder. And I'll explain that later. So what I've done here is I've added shadows. So what's the shadows? You can click on the shadow, click on the color, and let's say this is the shadow that I want. I'm going to save the hex code, and then I'm going to go to the J and make sure that the shadow on the J is the same. And then if you notice, I've got an outline. So I clicked on an outline. Look at the M. It's not outlined, and then I've outlined it. Again, what I've done here is I've added Crawford's green. Okay? Now, the design assets or the icons. You go to the left, you can create design assets. Now, be very mindful that if I drop this star in there over top of my logo, it's going to put it over top. I got to ask myself, is this going to take away from my logo? Now watch. Let's say I do decide to do that, and I want to use that as a part of my design. It can't be over top of my logo. So there's a thing called layering. You want to send it backward or move it down per se. That way you can see the back, or you can see the logo, and you can see the star. Give it a second. Or move to bottom. So now it puts it behind it. Okay? Now I'm going to undo and get rid of it. If you want, there's all kinds of designs you can use. Or there's icons. If you want to use icons and you say something to the effect of, let's say you're making a logo for a football team, and you wanted to drop something in there like that, but you got to be mindful not to have too much of that. Don't have too many things of that. Like what I could do, oops, I made a mistake, so I need to hit Control Z. That's something else. Control Z is undo. I can make that smaller. Put it right there. Add text. Put the player's number in there. And I just made something like a plaque for a football team that somebody would pay for. Okay, but in this case, I don't want to do too much to it because this is my logo for a video. Let's check out the design assets and see, maybe I want to do a border. Maybe I want to make it a border. Okay, well, I'm going to have to make it a lot smaller. So before I do that, I have to hit Control A. I've got to group it. I've got to make the whole thing smaller. And you notice how it makes it all smaller? Look at the dotted lines. I want to put it right in the center. Now it's in the center. Now I want to find the perfect border. So I'm going to go ahead here and type border, or I'm going to type thin border. Okay? See what pops up. Well, I don't like anything there, so I'm just going to erase the word thin. See what that does under borders. I don't know, there's something about this that I like. I'm going to drop that right there. Well, let me see. Oops. I deleted the whole thing, so I need to hit Control Z. Control Z is undo. See if I can find, oh, so I'm going to use this one. I'm going to make it a lot larger. Put a border around it. Now, I'm just showing you processes. I wouldn't recommend putting a border, but I'm just showing you how you can do it. And I would recommend making sure that that border is not very bright, or I'm making it what's called opaque. I'm creating opacity to it. Okay. Now, I'm going to select all. That moves it over a little bit. Okay, move it up a little bit. Say that I'm done. I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to hit download. I'm going to hit PNG, start download, and I'm going to save it as a transparent file. Now, remember, this is saved, so you can always go back and mess with it. You can always go back and, like, so this is what it looks like, PNG transparent. So when I open it up, that's what that looks like. Turned out pretty good, okay? It's not too busy. It didn't take away from the image, and it won't, because I'm going to make it smaller, and that's a good brand for me, okay, if I were going to do something, okay? If you want to download it as a JPEG, you can download it as a JPEG, okay? And let's look at a JPEG. Let's see the difference. It's not much. Now, the difference between a PNG and a JPEG is just the size of the file, okay? And then last but not least, what you're going to do is you're going to find your shared folder. And in this case, I'm just going to show you first period's shared folder. And I will share it with you using your email address. All you have to do is type in the class name. In this case, I'm going to type in first period, logo, 10/1921. And there's the first period logos. You're going to hit new, file upload, and then on the Chromebook, in my case, I'm using my Mac, but on the Chromebook, you're going to find recents, and then you're going to drop it in there. So I just dropped it in that folder, okay? Remember, it needs to be labeled.